Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Clayton Dietz. Thank you so much for tuning in here for another week of the Wet Net Podcast, your local fishing and outdoors podcast for the Pacific Northwest. As always, if you're digging what you're hearing and seeing so far, please be sure to share us out there with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button. Before we get this episode rolling, I'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to our awesome sponsors. First on the list, we have Fish Sauce with the Rod Positioning Gadget, also known as the RPG. It's a slick little tool that'll help you get your rod holders good and tight. Find them online at www.fishsauce.com or in some local fishing retailers. Next up, we have Anglers Unlimited. I don't know about you, but I love to shop local and support local businesses. These guys are doing it right. They have it all from big tackle vendors to mom and pop tackle manufacturers. You can also find a huge selection of fresh and cured baits. Robert and his guys are top-notch when it comes to knowledge, and they'll get you lined out with what you need for success. Open 7 days a week from 4 a.m. to 6 p.m. Go check them out and tell them Wet Net sent you. Next up, we have North Wild Outdoors. North Wild is top of the line when it comes to spinner blade patterns and paint quality. They also do custom paint for quick fish, super baits, and spinfish. You name it, they'll paint it. Go check them out in Anglers Unlimited or Bob's Sporting Goods, or find them online at www.northwildgear.com. And last but not least, we have Coldwater Strong. Coldwater Strong makes the highest quality salmon and steelhead gear for boat and bank angling alike. Go check them out at www.coldwaterstrong.com. What's going on, everybody? My name is Clayton Dietz. Thank you so much for tuning in here for another week of the Wet Net Podcast, your local fishing and outdoors podcast for the Pacific Northwest. This evening, I'm sitting down with Lucas Holmgren with Salmon, Trout, Steelheader, and Addicted Fishing. How you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome, man. Glad to be here. And I noticed your podcast months ago, and I'm stoked you reached out.
Yeah. No, I've been listening to Salmon, Trout, Steelheader for quite a while, and I really enjoy it. A lot of information. You talk to a lot of cool people, so it's fun to steal some of your ideas, I guess.
Yeah, go for it, man. Go for it.
Yeah,
please do. You're doing it right. So.
Yeah. So as always, if you guys are liking what you're hearing and seeing so far, please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, share it out there with your friends, and help us keep growing this thing, man. We got a lot of cool stuff going, and it's just going to keep growing from here. Like to take a quick second to shout out our awesome sponsors. First on the list, we have Anglers Unlimited, and we have a special announcement for Anglers Unlimited that's going to come here at the end of this sponsor rant.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
You're not going to tell us now?
No, I'm going to make you wait.
All right.
So we got Anglers Unlimited. We got Adam with Fish Sauce and his RPG, the rod positioning gadget. Super cool 3D printed tool. Cool. You can use them for tightening down your Scotty or Folby rod holders if you're using those slip discs.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
Cool.
Coldwater Strong, obviously, Ken's got all of his awesome products. He's been a great sponsor so far, and he's a fun dude to talk to, honestly. He's a blast to talk to.
Yeah, and that stuff seems really tough and well built.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
And then we got Jared with North Wild Outdoors. Obviously, he's kind of on
Kirkley?
fire. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Jared's the man.
He's on fire right now in the fishing industry with all of his awesome blades and everything he's got going on.
Jared's got like this extreme eye for color.
Right.
Which is actually like a condition. He sees more than we do, so he's a genius with like color patterns.
Yeah. He's an awesome dude. He's actually working on our new logo right now for the podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
He's dialed at a design, and I actually worked on his website back in the day. That's
really?
Cool.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
That's awesome. So the Anglers Unlimited announcement. So Anglers Unlimited down there off of Davidson Avenue in Woodland, they are doing a Customer Appreciation Day Saturday, July 13th. So you guys show up there. They're doing a new merch drop. So they're currently right now, they are having a big sale on a lot of their old merch. So all of these long sleeves and sweatshirts and stuff, they're going on sale because they're trying to get rid of all the old stuff and get the new stuff ready to go. So all the long sleeve t-shirts and hoodies, so you get 2 hoodies for $50, which that's a pretty good good deal.
That's usually one hoodie.
Yeah. And then you get 2 long sleeve shirts for $30. And the hats are only $12.99 a piece. So from my understanding, the purpose of it is they're trying to kind of move away from the Angler West name, and they're trying to really embrace the Anglers Unlimited, which I love that. Like,
yeah, me too, because, Angler West had an awesome shop there. I used to go there all the time. But, they've got to transition over. The store was always Angler West, and now they're Anglers Unlimited, so they got both. But I just went in there. I was going out fishing with Marlin on the beach, doing sockeye steelhead. I went in looking for coon shrimp.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, they have everything. I'm on the phone with him and I'm like, so they got this. And he's like, buy one of every jar. I'm like, you're paying me back for this, right?
I hope
but
so.
What's cool is like, they have them all priced the same. They got all the good brands. And at least when I was in there, like everything was dialed.
Yeah.
But to have that many good brands of shrimp
Right.
that we could try out, that was crazy. I haven't seen that.
Well, you know what else is genius is they put their shrimp in the back of the store. So how much stuff do you have to walk past to get to the shrimp?
Exactly.
If you're a fisherman, you got an eye like you and I do. You're walking through to find your shrimp, and you're like, oh, geez.
I know. And right now, a bunch of the Yamamoto Senko stuff, because I love bass fishing and stuff.
Yeah.
They got all the stuff. You can always kind of tell when you go into a tackle shop if they really know the local fishery.
Oh yeah, which
And
Robert does.
He does. You can tell by the inventory.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. But you'll be walking back to find your kin shrimp, and you'll, oh man, he's got the single fin short bust flashers. Like, oh man, you know.
I didn't get caught by the flashers. I got caught by the spin glows.
Right.
Big old rack, nicely labeled, and you can never have enough of those.
No, you never can.
Yeah.
So yeah, Saturday, July 13th, going in there to the store. They're going to have burgers and dogs. They're going to have a big merch drop. Rumor on the streets is they're going to have some kind of spinner building deal. I think it's maybe
like a seminar or something?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a seminar. I think it's just like for kids. I think kids are going to.
They can actually do it or something?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So
That's cool.
there's going to be more info to come. Don't mark my words on that. That's just something that Jen had told me. But I remember her saying something about building spinners.
I will hold you to it. And
I would too.
complain if it's not. So
yeah. So Saturday, July 13th, go on in there to Anglers Unlimited. They're gonna have a pretty cool setup put together. Nice. I think there's gonna be a lot of vendors and stuff there too.
Cool, man. I gotta make it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring the kiddos.
So now we got the boring shit out of the way. Let's get into you a little bit. So Lucas Holmgren. First I had heard of you was obviously with the Salmon Trout Steelheader podcast.
Cool. Yeah.
Obviously you're a lot more than that. Dive into it a little bit.
Yeah, and thankfully, Salmon Trout Steelheader is a brand I've got to work with, and I got to start the podcast there. But I've also worked with Marlon Lefevre and Addicted Fishing. Well, actually, back when I joined Marlin in about 2012, it was called Fishing Addicts Northwest at the time. So Salmon Trout Steelheader.
I remember those days.
Yeah, exactly. So Salmon Trout Steelheader actually came years down the road after, actually previously doing some stuff with All Around Angler, which is a YouTube channel. One of my best friends, Chris Heller, amazing guy. I'm fishing with him tomorrow. Yeah. Can't wait to go out and fish with him. He's awesome. He's like the OG of YouTube steelhead stuff.
Oh, really?
Same time as Addicted was coming out, or Fishing Addicts. And so, yeah, kind of Fishing Addicts. Then I did go full-time with Lamaglass fishing rods for many years, working under Tom Posey when he took over the company. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually now, I'm not an employee for them, but I still do some consulting and web work and video work with Lamaglass. And they have a new owner, Jose Ruelas, who's a good friend that I go fishing with. But he's a dialed-in guy. Lamaglass, is a brand since 47 or whatever it is and stuff. But it is a new Lamaglass now, and Jose and Roger are doing an awesome time working, and Posey family still involved in everything. So,
yeah.
But then a lot of fishing companies through the years. So Salmon Trout Steelheader, I did start working for them. I wish I knew the year. It was probably 17, 18. I remember meeting.
It's the year I graduated high school.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So Nick Amato. And actually, Dave Eng had been the one who had told Nick about me, so I appreciate that, Dave. And I did meet up with Nick at Hawkinson Market in Battleground. I went down to the East Fork Lewis with Nick and caught a summer steelhead there.
Oh, really?
And it was a lot of fun. We met up, we talked, but it was still a little while out. And then I ended up working for the Amatos and adopting Frank Amato as my grandpa. And I just talked to him.
That's what you were telling me about yesterday.
Yeah, 2 days ago on the phone with him. He is just a gem. And obviously the fishing stuff's awesome, but he's also incredible historical knowledge. He was a history teacher. So we talk about the Roman Empire, World War II and all that stuff. And, theology, because he's a Catholic and I'm a Lutheran, and we like to, talk about all that stuff. But Frank did an amazing thing back in '67, I believe it was. He was a history teacher, And, you know, magazines were popular, but the fishing magazines were very national, like Field and Stream. They're focused on trout, walleye, you know, and so on and so forth. So
Great.
Frank was really the first to really embrace Northwest salmon and steelhead and trout, and of course form Salmon Trout Steelheader.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fortunate enough to, you know, come in, work for them. I built 5 websites for them. You know, Salmon Trout, it's not just Salmon Trout Steelheader. Frank Amato Publications, or, you know, Amato Media, you know, has had Salmon Trout Steelheader, Great Lakes Angler Magazine, which, by the way, Great Lakes Angler is ridiculously good content.
Is it?
Because those guys out in the Great Lakes, because of how many fish are out there, and like how big the fisheries are, they're not like us where we have these little windows where we're trying to get one bite, you know, type of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, some of the writers are kind of hiding a little bit about locations and stuff.
Yeah. Well, look at, and I'm totally going to cut you off right here.
Go for it.
Look at our sockeye fishery.
Yeah.
We got 329,000 fish have gone over the dam today, like to date.
Yep.
And
what just happened?
They just closed it.
I know.
They just closed it on us.
It's brutal. And somehow on the best summer steelhead run, probably since 2012 or whatever.
Yeah.
Except for above Bonneville, it's not looking like that. But as far as the lower river, incredible run.
Right.
And it's now down to 1 fish. But I think the only reason for that is even though the lower Columbia tributaries have a ton of summers, the upriver component is not coming. And one thing about that, coast-wide, we have a steelhead improvement, and if above Bonneville is not reflecting that, we are screwing something up bad.
Yeah.
And it has to be out-migration. It has to be summer steelhead smolts on their way out, getting destroyed by cormorants and whatever else. I don't think walleye and bass are a big issue, and I have 2 rivers that kind of make that obvious to me, but the cormorants, the birds, this marine, what is it, the migratory bird federal protection.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're trying to protect Chinook and steelhead and all that stuff and pouring millions upon millions into it, but then we're protecting the cormorants, which destroy up to 50% of the summers before they even get out.
Well, and then look, they're fighting sea lions trying to get back in.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. It's insane. It's like what we don't realize here, like what we count as a good run. You know, I had a podcast with Scott Ammerman about salmon and about the fisheries up in Canada and Alaska, you know, the netting fisheries. And I get it, commercials in the ocean, I totally get it. You know, they got to supply food to people who don't fish like us. But apparently we're only getting about 10 to 20% of the adult salmon that are actually caught. So if it wasn't for all that commercial activity out there, we have no idea what we're capable of. And with steelhead, that may not be as much of an issue because they're not supposed to be targeted out there, although obviously people do. But we have a serious issue truly with bird predation. And so somehow on a year when every other place on the coast is having phenomenal summer steelhead run, and I don't know this actually. I probably should look a little more into it because I haven't even looked at the numbers in like 2 weeks or whatever over Bonneville.
Yeah.
But the fact they put it down to 1 steelhead tells me they're worried about the upper river fish because they're coming in now.
Right. Well, I could be wrong here too. I think it was supposed to go to 1. I think that was kind of the plan when they set the seasons. Actually,
normally it would be with the regulations, but then they had that June 6th meeting, I think it was, where they said all the way through July 31st, 2 sockeye and 2 hatchery steelhead, or I mean combination of 2.
Yeah. 2
so
fish limit.
I don't think they were expecting that. The numbers are awesome, but maybe the upper river steelhead are not as good, and maybe the thing is, people are so good at fishing today because of the knowledge out there.
Well, knowledge, electronics,
the
tackle,
gear, the great rods, the Superline braid stuff. It's insane.
Yeah.
And so people are very efficient, and maybe we're just mopping up sockeye.
Yeah. Well, you know, and my buddy Adam, he's actually one of the guys that told me about the sockeye closure. I didn't see anything on Facebook all day about it.
Yeah.
And he had made a good point about like some of the smaller upriver tributaries, they just could, maybe they're not getting their escapement. We could have we could have a huge abundance of sockeye going into certain rivers, but if other rivers are not getting their escapement, they're going to shut it down. And it's a harsh reality. And one big thing that I saw scrolling through the interwebs was a lot of guys were bitching about the natives and netting, but that I feel like that's kind of a touchy subject also, because what people don't realize a lot of times is the natives, they put their fair share of fish in the river.
Yes,
we take from them far more than they take from us,
Yeah, the thing is they're not held back by the same regulations that we are, so they are able to do things that the state and WDFW couldn't. And there are rivers that, we see a WDFW plan of, say, 80,000 summer steelhead smolts, but the reservation above that is dumping 200,000.
Right.
And so there are things, and there's Upper Columbia. I mean, the Upper Columbia tribes have basically reignited the summer Chinook that we couldn't even fish for decades. So that's the whole thing. Is like, you can sit there and battle with people over taking the last few fish, but the fact is when there's more fish, we can share.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it should be like that. And the problem is, I think a lot of it is just smolts getting out to the ocean. The ocean we can't control as much, of course, but there is some low-hanging fruit that the tribes have done. And it's not that every broodstock program I 100% agree with, but it's almost always better than the state-run hatchery programs where we're just trying to get the bare minimum budget. And then you got the wild fish groups coming in, which, believe me, I'm all about environmentalism for fish and preserving wild creeks where they are. But these people, they get money through, donations and stuff. And instead of actually doing stuff that will help wild fish, they just go take down a hatchery somewhere and then go tell their people, like, look what we did for wild fish.
Right.
And then the wild fish just get lower and lower.
Yeah, so because of the inferior hatchery fish.
Oh, yeah, good old inferior hatchery fish.
Mixing those hatchery genes with the wild genes.
There's I've done videos for little documentaries for, like, hatchery wild coexist, as well as, like, NSIA. And the owner of Patagonia doesn't like me because of one of them that I did. It's great. But the thing is that whole hatchery inferiority, there's studies, and it's just common sense, that yes, of course, when you raise a fish in a concrete pen and feed them from above, they will not be as they won't understand predation and things like that as much.
Right.
So something cool the tribes have done, and I got to interview or record Larry Cassidy and Frank Amato doing an interview on the Salmon Trout Steelheader YouTube channel. And Larry talked about how these tribes up in the Upper Columbia, what they were doing with their salmon fry and smolt and everything, they actually would feed them from below so they would stay lower. And they would put covers, but they would put birds above so that the fish would learn to stay low to stay away from the birds.
That's smart.
And then they also had volitional release that they could leave, but they didn't have to. So instead of like 200,000 fish being dumped out of a tube from 10 feet above the water, just landing, getting stunned, and every bird in the world coming in and be like, yay, free fish. It's like you get this slower, steady stream of fish. And hatchery genetics, if it is born, like, say you take 2 hatchery fish and you fertilize the eggs and then you place them in the river and they spawn as fry and live a natural life, you know, for their first 2 years before going to the ocean, they have not been able to find any difference in spawning fitness.
Right.
And so the fact is, if you grow up for the first 2 years in the river and learn the river and you're in a stream where that can support spawning steelhead or coho or whatever it is, then you know where to go back, you know where it's cold, you know where it's warm. It's just simply like that. Now, on rivers that have a ton of dams and stuff like that, and there's just no chance for wild fish, even the concrete hatchery thing can be an amazing thing.
Right.
I do think we could learn a couple things from the tribes.
Yeah.
And I do think even the tribes sometimes with broodstock, they're so upset, so kind of like focused on going for big steelhead,
Right.
that you miss out on the 2-year and the 1-year fish and the resident rainbows that are steelhead. But on years when the steelhead returns aren't good, those residents kind of fill in the gap for the bucks and stuff. So hatchery programs can be improved. There's amazing programs happening all over.
Yeah.
But I feel like overall, hatcheries are not the issue. Even when they're not run ideally, they're still not the primary factor.
Right.
Like it is so rare. I have seen cases where I've thought, you know what, I don't think it was a good idea to do it that way, but it wasn't the issue.
Right.
At the end of the day, it wasn't the issue. It was habitat. Oh, the river got way too warm in the summer, killed all the wild smolts.
Right.
And then the hatchery smolts, which were already 2 years old and they were ready to go out, they're put in and they go out to the ocean. Those are the ones that survived.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Which from the sounds of it, it sounds like that's a big concern for our fall this year. I've heard that they're really concerned that the river temps are going to jump way up this year because of the lack of snowpack that we had on the mountains this winter. Yeah.
Is it bad?
I heard it was bad.
It seems like it should be better.
There's
at least
still,
in the last couple
there's
years.
still snow on the mountains.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I was coming back from Bend. It seemed nice, but we've had a huge issue with that. Like recent years, I don't know anything about it because I don't ski or snowboard or anything, but that is a huge issue. One thing though is our water temperatures. At least now, it's like late June.
Yeah,
it has been colder. Temperature-wise, more just due to the fact that it's not blazing hot in early June this year and stuff like that. But we at least have had some colder water temperatures like May and June. And one thing I've noticed on some of the lower Columbia tributaries, I don't know if they're coming in later just for whatever reason, but there's spring Chinook still showing up that usually are kind of over by like early June. And I wonder, I was talking with my buddy Matt Golke about this, I wonder if they can just tell that like the temperature is not rising real fast, so we can take our time.
Yeah, you know? Well, look at the Willamette Falls.
Yeah,
the spring Chinook are kind of just starting to show up in decent numbers.
Really?
You know? Oh yeah. Like.
So was it a bad run, or are they just kind of moseying along?
That's the thing is, I think everybody's asking the same question.
Yeah.
You know?
Because the summer steelhead numbers over Willamette is insane.
Insane.
I
haven't actually looked at the graph, but I've been told it's probably one of the best runs that we've had in recent history.
Oh, decades, perhaps. And, you know, I talked to Nick Amat about early on, and he's like, you know, may have been in April or early May, and he said, let's keep an eye on this. If it's just a little bump and then it drops, then it's just like a high water event type of thing.
Yeah.
But then I talked to him about a month later. He's like, it hasn't stopped.
No.
So I wrote an article early on that maybe came out June 15th. Maybe I wrote it May 15th, and it was like for a newspaper that and magazines. I don't really know where it goes all the time, but it's like kind of Oregon and Washington. And I basically like put down the numbers, and I said, by the time this article comes out, you'll be able to know whether this prediction is true. And it is true. However, what's crazy and what was interesting, I started telling Frank, I always call Frank about just fishing the Columbia because he loves to get updates on that.
Yeah.
And he was actually in a recent video, landed 3 big old summer Chinook on Father's Day with Tony. That was great.
That was awesome.
Yeah, he went out
with Tyler Kraft, right?
Tyler Kraft, my buddy. Tyler's the man, and he took him out, and they did awesome. And but Frank was saying last year there was not a lot of 1-year Deschutes fish. And usually that's the indicator for the next year. So maybe that, you know, and I was thinking, oh, it's just a great run. They're going to come.
Right.
And again, I don't have the numbers. I need to look back at it. But it kind of seems like above Bonneville, now, don't get me wrong. It's way better than last year in certain places.
Right.
But last year was the worst ever seen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And these lower rivers are. Oh, they are getting
crazy.
Fish. Yeah.
And it's usually like the lower rivers are not as good and the upper rivers are better, but it's been different now. So
yeah. How often is it that you'll see fisheries like hover fishing at the mouth of the Lewis or anything like that? A lot of times you're just getting the fish that are staging in that colder water that are going to bomb upriver anyways.
Yep.
Versus how many fish are going up the Lewis now.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's a big thing because what doesn't get talked about as much, people know, like on the Deschutes, for instance, it's very well known that on hot summer Columbia days that steelhead and even salmon will dip into the Deschutes and go quite a ways up. The John Day, it happens like crazy. But it's not just there. These lower river tributaries that are especially cold because they come out of glaciers, and like the Lewis has reservoirs, the Cowlitz has reservoirs. When the water is super hot, that cold water will draw fish all the way in, even past tidewater, and I'll catch wild summers and Chinook that are not fish from those tributaries. You just know it's not. First of all, those two don't have any true wild summer steelhead.
Yeah.
They did back in the day, huge amounts, and for some reason the dams have to replace winters and springers and all that, but they don't care about the summer steelhead.
Yeah.
And that's I just could rabbit trail about this stuff all the time, but we put up dams on the Lewis and Cowlitz and everything, and did not brood stock or figure out anything for those summers.
Yeah.
But when they removed the Elwha River dams, no fish passage, summer steelhead, wild summer steelhead, extinct.
Right.
Winters can survive just out of tidewater. They're fine. Summer's got to go way up to over summer and then spawn and everything.
Yeah.
Well, once they removed those dams, the rainbow trout above the dams still had that summer steelhead genetic. 3 years later, it was the biggest summer steelhead run on the entire Washington coast.
Really?
So what I believe is on the Cowlitz and on the Lewis above those 3 dams, those rainbow trout still have some of them winter, but some of them summer genetics.
Yeah.
And if we do put fish passage in those dams, those wild summers will be back.
Yeah.
And I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Plus, if we leave the dams in and put fish passage, all of a sudden the sockeye that spawn in those creeks, their fry have a place to hang out, because sockeye cannot spawn in a river or creek without a freshwater lake. A couple of them can.
Yeah.
But if you want a big sockeye run like Bristol Bay, you've got like a river that runs into a lake, that runs into a river, that runs into the ocean, and all the sockeye fry, they rear in the lake.
Yeah.
So if we did put fish passage in, now we got an insane sockeye run, winter steelheads, summer steelhead, naturally spawning, plus hatchery ones. We got spring Chinook, fall Chinook, and probably summer Chinook would develop through that.
Yeah.
So we do have insane opportunity. We've got some fisheries rebounding, and we've worked so hard, but sadly, we just waited until there was 5% of the fish left.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I hate to say it, we got to cut to a quick break here
Let's do
because
it.
we got
Let's
a new camera that only lets me record 30 minutes at a time.
Hey, but it's a nice camera.
It's a very nice camera.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Robert
Sounds
and
good.
Jen. So
Yeah.
we'll cut to a quick break here. We got some more slightly what's the word I'm thinking of here? I don't want to say touchy topics, but
Heck, why not?
yeah. So
Yeah.
stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back from our little intermission. Like I said in the last episode, this is something that is it's going to be a regular thing now. Like, we got that new camera, and it only lets me record in 30-minute intervals, so we got to take a quick breather. And it's not really a horrible thing. I kind of dig it.
I like it.
But we got some little sprinkles falling now, and
yeah, that's true.
lighting's probably changed a little bit. But
then you guys don't have to see our ugly faces anymore. So
well, I'm gorgeous. I don't know what you're
that's
talking
true.
about.
I speak for myself here. So
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of your podcasting background.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing the Salmon Trout Steelheader podcast?
Good question. Probably 3-4 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And I just started it myself. I think actually I did the Addicted podcast first. I started that one out. Marlon and I had the idea, and actually the first 5 episodes I think I produced, and we actually did it at Netlingham Audio, the studio that I interned at, and we got rain coming. I hope your gear's all right. I'm okay, but
We'll be okay until it starts coming hard.
All right.
I think
sounds good.
We'll see.
So I've actually done audio engineering since age 14. I've played guitar since I was 12. Been doing a bunch of recording. My parents bought me a program. But I got to do a studio internship at Netlingham Audio, learn from the man himself, Kevin. He's awesome. He taught me so much.
Yeah.
And then with the Addicted podcast, I believe I did start that one first. We did that one there. I still sometimes go on that podcast, but a lot of my addicted stuff is more behind the scenes.
Right.
I'm doing e-commerce, I'm doing website stuff. I used to videotape and film all that stuff 2013-ish. You know, Rob McElroy was doing a bunch of the video early on. I started doing like the tutorials and stuff, and I've never been the best video guy or editor or really any marketing task, but I can do it all. So I just kind of do it. And back in those days, you know, I met Marlon. I was karaokeing at El Rancho Viejo in Battleground.
Oh yeah.
And he comes over, he's like, "Hey man, you can actually sing."
Yeah.
He's like, "You want to come, you know, hang out, we'll record some stuff," and hands me his card. It says Fishing Addicts Northwest, and I'm like huge into bass and trout at the time.
Yeah.
Caught a salmon or two, but never a steelhead.
As for the record, nobody has ever told me I can sing.
Really? Well, I'm sorry, man.
No.
Someday.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, just try it now, and I'll tell you whether or not, you know. And yeah, so it was just like a random, you know, thing. But then all of a sudden, I'm like looking at his Facebook. He's got giant steelhead everywhere, and I'm like, "You teach me how to steelhead fish. I'm gonna help you with your website."
Yeah.
And we just started doing an old WordPress website. We're ironing patches onto hats. I remember like Dave's Tango Free was like our first sponsor back in the day. You know, I made up a proposal and all that stuff, and it was just so cool. You know, people called us Facebook fishermen, YouTube fishermen, all that stuff, and we just kind of were like, well, I mean, I guess so, but we're fishing, and you know, we always like the whole thing is we don't say river names. We're not about exposing locations themselves. We're about teaching you how to fish your location. So yeah, Addicted podcast, I think it was first, but I did start up the Salmon Trout Steelheader one, and Nick and Tony and Frank and everyone there, the Amatos, they just gave me full, you know, ownership of the content and just let me do what I do, and which was really cool. So, and then of course, you know, me myself, I'm just Lucas, you know, the guy interviewing, but when I'm working with Addicted or Salmon Trout Steelheader, then I can call up, you know, fishermen and various people and get interviews with these guys. And the problem is I prefer in person. I like what you're doing here.
Yeah.
So I don't really like to do the phone thing. So I don't end up getting it to do as many interviews as I would like to.
Yeah.
But when I can, I do. And then the rest of the time, I just sit there and rant because I talk too much in general or read articles. You know?
See, I'm right there in the same boat with you. So when I started this podcast,
when did you start it?
January.
Yeah, that's what's crazy.
Yeah, I started in January with one of my great buddies, Adam, the fish sauce guy. And we went into it because we kind of went into it with the idea of almost wanting to do like a weekend report deal. So when we started it, it was the wet net weekend report.
Yep.
And I was really hard pressed on trying to get episodes out on Friday. So I would try to record, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just try to keep the information relevant. And then Adam ended up getting a new job. Life kind of happened. And I took it myself and kind of ran with it. Well, I'm also working, you know, 50, 60 hours a week.
Oh yeah.
And I'm trying to raise two kids at the same time. So trying to keep everything in that tight of a time frame was kind of unreasonable. Oh yeah. So we ended up kind of, I would say, adapting and making it less of a weekend report and more of just a fishing podcast, you know. That way it doesn't matter if I'm a couple days late posting it, or it doesn't matter if I recorded 2 weeks prior. You know, the information is still going to be somewhat relevant.
100%. Yeah, because like with me, the Salmon Trout Steelheader podcast is something I do in the evening, kind of like my music. I got my marketing business, Lucas Holmgren Media, which is like Arrow Timber, Addicted, Blue Bite, Salmon Trout Steelheader, Masic, Aegis, a million random things.
Yeah.
And so the podcast is my evening thing. I wish I put out more. So, but the thing is that whole schedule thing, and I love what Dwayne England is doing, you know, with Fish Hunt Northwest, because he can do that up-to-date thing.
Yep.
And he was doing it before he was retired as a firefighter, but now he's retired, and he's able to do the, like, live report stuff. For me, I cannot be consistent with my podcast. I got 2 kids and a lot of work and and trying to do music on the weekends and the evenings. So I went for the same thing where it could be relevant a year from now. And the cool thing is I've had so many listeners tell me they've gone back and listened to every single one.
Yeah.
You know, and so the report thing is awesome if you can do it.
Right.
But I can't.
I can't either.
And maybe you will,
Yeah.
you know,
Maybe
soon,
someday down the
you know,
road.
But right now, I think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. I'm having a blast. We've had a lot of really cool guys on, and a lot of different information. And I
think I probably saw it like right away in January when you started or something.
Yeah.
Because I noticed it. And then I noticed you were consistent, which is everything with internet you know, marketing and YouTube.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, this guy's obviously serious about it.
Yeah.
And I kept seeing it, and so that's awesome. I mean, only January?
Yeah. Since January, I've missed 2 episodes.
Oh man, you're fired.
I know, that's what I'm saying. One of them was during the Sportsman show.
Oh, okay.
And that was before I had all my own equipment, so we were still
little secret Sportsman show. You can knock out like 20 podcasts. Yeah. That's what I do.
yeah. That's what I need to do next
That's what you need to do.
I didn't have all my own equipment yet, so and Adam was busy with working at the show,
well,
so I
next
wasn't
Sportsman
able to.
show, let's just go around and just grab people and
Let's do it.
Yo, we're doing a podcast. You're with me, then him.
yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
And then the second one that we missed was this last weekend. I ended up my buddy had a wedding up in Tacoma,
nice.
and I had reached out to a handful of guys up there to see if they could help me put something together, and it wasn't panning out. So,
dude, life is life. I mean, if your wonderful viewers don't mind just doing a Patreon or something, maybe you could do it like at a set time, and that would be a cool thing down the road. But I mean, the fact you're doing it while working full time with kids.
Right.
Good,
and trying to fish at the same time.
To fish, that's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
So it is funny, and I am not complaining at all. I have literally the best job in the world.
Yeah.
But I know I've had a lot of, younger guys who are into fishing who are like, hey man, I catch, 100 steelhead a year. How do I get in the fishing industry? And it's like, stop fishing and start like marketing products so other people can go catch fish.
Yeah.
Now at the same time, when I get to go film, like, I did that an addicted shrimping video lately, and with Lamaglass I'd get to go film on the clock, and salmon trout steelheader and stuff. So there is those, but it's not like me catching fish has nothing to do with me working in the fishing industry, except for knowledge and being able to bring that.
Right.
But really, it's me I've done video editing since I was like 15, audio since I was 14. I've been a writer forever, so I write blog articles, I write magazine articles. I know how to do e-commerce. I can do a little bit of coding. I can do, Wix, Shopify, WordPress, all that stuff. So the fact is, in the fishing industry, sometimes you do get to fish and all that sort of stuff, but most of the time it's about providing value to people who are gonna go fish.
Yeah. And that's my thing is I never claim to be super knowledgeable fisherman. Like I go out, sometimes I get fish, sometimes I don't.
Oh yeah.
I'm not big into like technology and like editing and all that other stuff, but you know what I bring to the table? I'd like
besides good looks and
good looks, in a gorgeous bod.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's be honest. That's the only reason your podcast is successful.
That's right. That's right. People are just hoping one of these days my shirt's going to come off.
Someday, Bert Kreitzer, watch out.
Yeah.
Yep.
No. I can talk to people. Like
exactly.
that's about it, know. And I was curious as a truck driver listeing to podcasts. I was like, you know what? I feel like I could do that.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I'm loving it, man. Absolutely loving it.
Well, yeah, and the cool thing is with the podcast, like the fishing podcast, for me, and I guarantee you it's the case for your audience, the people that listen to the Salmon Trout Steelheader podcast, and I bet yours, they are year-round fishermen. Yeah. They're into it like you wouldn't believe. They probably catch way more than you and I.
Yeah.
And they think about fishing maybe not all day, but every day.
Right.
And they're buying gear and they're out fishing a lot. And the cool thing about that is like, even though my podcast numbers might not be like to the level of the YouTube or Facebook views you may get, these are people who are diving into it, listening to it directly, and picking up any little grain of information.
Yep.
And they may know, 99% of the fishing stuff that a podcast hears, but they hear that 1% and they're like, I need to add that. You know, like a buddy, I interviewed Scott Haugen or something like that, or
I read one of Scott Haugen's books when I was in like 7th grade. I did an article on it in school.
Oh, dude, really?
Yeah.
That's so cool, man. I got to film with him. I met him up in Alaska got to film with him the whole time. He called me Short Bus and Red Bull the whole time, but was an awesome guy. And I filmed with him, did a video for STS. It's like fishing the best salmon river in the world or something like that. And so I filmed that and edited it and put it up on YouTube. And then he sent it to our former president's son, and then filmed with or fished with him up there and stuff. And it's like amazing. It's my cousin Mark Corpy's lodge, the Basheriff Lodge on the Igigik River. And so like Scott was a pro. He's done music for TV for like 30 years and stuff.
Yeah.
So I like set up the camera. I'm like, hey Scott, can you talk about this? Boom. One take. Like 10 minutes it just dialed in stuff. I'm like, oh, that's why he does it.
Yeah. You should see me trying to do like a giveaway announcement video or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll have like 36 takes.
Yeah.
And like half of them are like pretty okay, but like I'll stumble on a couple words and I'm like, fuck, you know, delete it.
Yeah, and then you do the perfect take and you weren't recording.
Yeah.
You know. So
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, the podcasting thing's cool, and obviously anybody can start a podcast or whatever, but being consistent with it and actually like putting thought into the content and everything, like there is. And here's one thing, I got lucky. I did the Salmon Trout Steelheader podcast.
Right.
That's a brand that's been around since '67. I'm not going to pretend like I brought all the authority to it, but at the same time, I started it and I was consistent with it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I need to go record one after this, but just doing it and having good content, and then you find people who want to listen, and for me, with my podcast, every single one that I've met on the river in the tackle shop or hit me up on Instagram or something, every single one of them awesome people who are just love fishing.
That's
all it is.
That's one thing that I think I really love about what I'm doing over here is I'm building it from the ground up.
Yep.
You know,
exactly.
back in January, I was Clayton Dietz driving log truck.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to Drano my first trip this year, and by the time Drano started, I was 3 or 4 months into it.
Yeah.
I got recognized by somebody at the ramp. Like, oh, hey, you're wetting that. I was like, hey, man.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's cool about it is like, and I'm like, obviously you could like let that go to your head and all that stuff, whatever. Dude. But the thing what actually it is like someone who shares a passion with you.
Yeah.
And is like, hey, this guy loves this and is already doing something about it. And I had the coolest experience. I'm out with a client of mine, Chris Cecilia from Masick, who I work with, and we get off the river, and there's this guy there that pulls up, rolls down the window. He tells me, he watches videos, podcast articles and stuff, and he gets out of the car, and he's got his 6-year-old son with him, and he shows me this picture his son caught like the week before, a steelhead, beautiful one.
Yeah.
And like they like read the articles and stuff and all that stuff. And so I got to take a picture with his son and like give him some books and stuff. And literally that, like, it's like a shared passion, and I don't really know how to describe it. It's like when you can be involved in someone like developing their fishing passion, or especially when they hit you up like, hey, I read your book or article and I went out and caught 3 coho.
Yeah.
It's like, no way.
Yeah.
Because I got skunked today.
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
I think I love it because it's an instant common ground. You know, you run into somebody and you instantly have something to talk about.
Totally. And the thing is, we all know there's those 5% of fishermen that are just they just want to have a bad time for some reason. But 95% of fishermen are so cool, fishermen and women. And then you got that loud 5% who, if they don't catch a fish that day, they got to take it out on someone on the internet or on the river.
Right.
And it's just like,
yeah.
That's not what fishing's for.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. One thing I really want to touch on before we run ourselves out of time here is you've been in social media in the fishing industry for a handful of years.
Yeah.
One thing that people love to bitch about is what social media has done to fisheries. Mm-hmm. More specifically, some of our higher traffic fisheries like Drano and the Wind River. And what's kind of your take on how social media has affected our fisheries, specifically in this area, because
Yeah,
like you were saying, in the Great Lakes over there, it's not as big of an issue.
Not as big in the lakes, although tributaries it can be. But the Northwest, from what I've heard, and I know people that have been all over the United States fishing industry, the Northwest is about as touchy as it gets there. So social media, it is a double-edged sword. I work in the online space and fishing, and I'm not going to pretend that it has never done anything bad.
Right.
You know, it can be abused. You know, you have someone who's just excited they caught a fish, and they went out, they posted a picture, they say the river, it's not their fault. They're just like, hey, I was out here, I got one. And then, you know, the next day you've got 50 people at that hole. And I remember not even saying the river. It's like late November, none of the Oregon or Washington coast tribs were getting steelhead. Marlin, me and Lonnie Brooks went out, just had a phenomenal day. We post a limit picture nowhere near anything you could recognize, but they knew where we were from.
Yeah.
And the next day, like 35 cars in the parking lot. And I'm like, no way. And I have to think about that stuff because there's no fish around. We're getting them early because we got lucky to be on the river that has them.
Right.
And they go in. So there needs to be, what people don't realize is Addicted. Like some people will be like, oh man, Addicted ruined my river because they saw like a hole they fished.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize, we've put out some videos when the river's still open and we just just didn't show every spot, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say we've been perfect in this regard. But was crazy, like zero pressure the next day.
Right.
And like stuff that, like that. Now, I do think there is a responsibility to be careful, especially it's early in the season, you're getting them. You know, it might be a good idea to just hold off on those pictures, do some things like that. At the same time, and especially bigger channels, Addicted, stuff like that. Salmon Trout Steelheader podcast, I'll talk about river names all the time, but it's not reports, it's just about the river, and especially, overall trends, biology, stuff like that. But what social media has done, and a lot of people have had to learn the hard way, but because people post pictures, there is a huge emphasis on treating wild fish right.
Right.
And keeping fish that are not meant to be harvested in the water. And because of social media, that has changed in a massive way.
Yep.
Even back when I went hard on steelhead fishing in 2012, I remember seeing people kicking wild steelhead back into the river.
Yeah.
It was normal.
Yeah, you see people catch a wild fish and just dump it back over the side.
And they're just mad.
Yeah.
They're mad like, this stupid native, I can't keep it. And it's like nowadays, and of course people go a little too crazy with it, but like that education. Now another thing, educating people to catch fish. Now some of us got lucky. Like I got to learn steelhead fishing from Marlin Lefevre and Lonnie Brooks and all them, and it was, they had it dialed. I got super lucky. My dad fished. He got me my first trout. I remember it like, just clearly.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do not have that in their life. They don't know anyone that fishes.
Yep.
They want to. They go find a YouTube channel. They do this. Now, you can find those locations. You can find hatchery stocking plants. You can do the research. Do that. And by the way, learn from the biologists, not the fishing article writers. Right. I'm serious. The biologists will lay it all out there.
Right. I
look up PDFs from biologists and figure that stuff out. But the fact is, social media has made the majority of people way better fishermen.
Yeah.
Nick Amato said back in the day, he'd be rolling down the river. And, of course, the guys that read the magazines, which even then was like 40 to 70 more so, obviously they would be dialed in on the techniques. But it was a lot easier to go behind people and get fish.
Yeah.
And now people are dialed in.
Oh, yeah.
You go around, you fish, most people are dialed.
Yeah.
Well,
especially
if they're not, they will be soon.
Especially with electronics being what they are now too. Like you got live scope and you got side scans and you like different downscale. Like the electronics now compared to what they were even 10 years ago.
Crazy.
Insane.
Crazy.
You can watch fish on a live scope. It's like watching them on TV.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I have live scope now.
Really?
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh man.
But
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sensitive rods, braids are incredible these days. Fluorocarbons are really good, like hooks.
Yeah.
Like I mean, 30 years ago, you had to sharpen everything out of the box yourself.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they're laser sharp out of the box. We do have all these advantages. We can, of course, there is the good old days as far as numbers and so on and so forth. But those went up and down, and certain things right now are the good old days.
Yeah, for sure. And I got to give a huge shout out to Alex Fuller with Fishing the Odds. He came out and he made a video a handful of months ago saying, like, listen, this is what's going on. I've been posting these videos in this time frame. I need to take accountability and kind of step back and post my videos later. Like,
Really?
I'm still going to be posting the videos, but it's going to be at a later date, trying to avoid some of these pressures.
Yeah.
So I think that him as a content creator and taking that responsibility,
Absolutely.
like, that is a huge thing.
Totally. And that is something with, like, Addicted. And I'm very careful with it to a crazy extent, maybe, but on current reports. But a lot of the Addicted videos, what people don't realize is those are put out after the fishery's over or after it's closed.
Yeah.
And the ones that are put out during, and again, I'm not going to say we've been perfect in this. We've had to learn our lessons. However, there's so many other YouTube and TV shows just blowing stuff up. It's like, come on, guys, really?
Yeah.
Like that TV show just showed people the launch. They showed people where to fish, the exact holes, like, and you're going to blame us because you recognized one tree maybe in the video?
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is a responsibility with it. He does really nice videos. And
he does awesome work.
I didn't hear that part, but that's really cool. And that's something you got to live and learn with.
Yeah.
And it is tough.
It's out of respect. It's out of respect. I've said it once on this podcast. I'll say it again. I think a lot of specifically Addicted's haters, but also, like, I think social media haters in general, they're just pissed off old dudes. But
young dudes.
We got to realize at the same time that there's a level of respect that we need to pay to those old guys, because what would these fisheries be without them?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And I do not want to blow up a small fishery that cannot sustain something like that. That is not the point. But when guides get mad at me for teaching people how to fish on a YouTube or podcast, and then say I'm taking away clients from them, that I don't understand, because I still book guided trips.
Right.
So what? Like, maybe they're just an asshole and people don't want to come back and fish with them.
Right.
And this is not very many guides, but the fact is, you teach people techniques and not blow up a fishery. That is helping people get into fishing. And the more people we have concerned about steelhead, the more we can actually get things done. Because, dude, I would not give 2 Fs about rivers, streams, water quality if it wasn't for steelhead. And now I'm like a tree-hugging greenie if it's next to the stream, Right. And so I think it's only a positive thing to get more people into it. I wish I would have, like, been into my passion in my late teens and early 20s instead of, like, getting into stupid stuff like partying and drugs and stuff. And I'm, like, sitting there right next to amazing rivers and not even realizing it. So it's only a positive thing. However, there's responsibility with it, and I've made mistakes. A lot of people have. However, you may get those people there for a bit, but what's crazy, next year they may not even go there, or they go there once, don't catch a fish, and never come back again.
Right.
So it's like, there's rivers. By the way, like, back in, like, the 60s or something, there's a TV show, they talk about the Kalama River, and, like, the next day for the next year, every single pull-off has, like, 5 cars in it. So this is not a new problem. Also, rivers that people say that Addicted destroyed, I've been on, and there's, like, no one for months.
Yeah.
And back in, like, the 90s, when there was a bunch of fish lined up everywhere before I was even born. So anyway, it's a responsibility.
Like you said, it's definitely a double-edged sword.
Totally.
There's some things that need to be done differently in social media, but there's also a lot of good that comes from social media, and taking care of our fish and getting our fish exposure. You know,
and getting together. It would be nice if, instead of everyone battling each other, the fly fishermen hate the gear fishermen, hate the gill netters, hate the like, that stuff's dumb. It's like, let's get more fish in, and then we won't have problems.
Right. So Alrighty. Well, that was a nice little tangent we went on there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I hate YouTube fishermen.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I'm probably a hater too at heart if I let myself.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, we're kind of creeping up here on the tail end of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll take a quick second, kind of try to recap what we talked about. Yep. We talked about
too many things, but podcasting, but the sockeye closure and the steelhead coming up and everything, and then you got we do have that addicted like kind of summer drop coming up on like the 30th or something, and then I'm working on marlin. I don't know if I'm supposed to announce this yet, but too late. We're doing like this killer summer giveaway and with a bunch of like prizes and cool stuff that's going to be coming up. I'm hoping to launch it early July. So,
yeah, awesome,
like
awesome.
Every dollar you spend, you get an entry. You know.
So,
so.
Super cool. Yeah. As always, we'll go ahead and shout out Fish Sauce, Anglers Unlimited, Cold Water Strong, North Wild again. Awesome. I really appreciate my sponsors. I appreciate all my listeners. You guys are helping grow this thing, and I'm having a blast doing it.
Those are good sponsors too. Good people.
Oh yeah,
good
awesome people.
Yeah, and then again, my name's Lucas Holmgren. Yep. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and I do have music on YouTube if you want to check out that channel. And the Salmon Trout Steelhead podcast if you want to check it out. It's something I do. But I need to get a little more scheduled like you. Yeah. So
yeah. So awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you sitting down. It's been a blast chatting with you.
Heck yeah.
And I'm excited to do some more stuff with you in the future.
Hopefully fishing.
Absolutely. Cool, so you guys have yourselves a great weekend. Hope you go out and get some fish. I don't know what they'll be.
I'm going for steelhead tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I guess I can only keep one. Oh no. Hopefully I can catch one.
Yeah. So you guys have yourselves a great weekend. As always, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, share it out there with your friends. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Tight lines. Have a great weekend.